next 2 weeks in the SEC will feature head-to-head first-place divisional showdowns. Next Saturday, a 1 versus 2 blockbuster between LSU and Alabama for Western supremacy. But first today, 8th-ranked Georgia and number 6 Florida battle for the East top spot and an inside path to the SEC championship game. Bragging rights are front and center, and a rivalry revs into high gear on the drive to Atlanta. Welcome to the Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes-Benz. In a little over an hour from now, we kick off with a big-time SEC East dog and gator fight between number 8 Georgia and number 6 Florida for bragging rights and so much more. Joining me are Brian Jones and Rick Neuheisel. These next 2 weeks are going to feel like a playoff.
These are prize fights. You go Hearns and Hagler, you go Ali Frazier.
Ooh.
Big prizes at stake. And this one today, Brian, is a knockout bout because the loser is effectively out of the college football playoff.
I would agree with that assessment. Yeah, these are the type of matchups that have you higher than the sky. So it should be a fun-filled affair today and next Saturday.
All right, well, let's go in chronological order and talk about our game today. Florida currently with a half-game lead over Georgia in the East. Kyle Trask has done everything asked of a quarterback stepping into a difficult situation when he took over for the injured Felipe Franks, leading that big fourth-quarter comeback at Kentucky, and the Gators has just been rolling from there.
You talk about just what the doctor ordered when Felipe Franks went down. He comes off the bench in a Kentucky game where they were down 2 scores. He leads them to victory there, and in 5 starts, he's got 14 touchdown passes. He's completing 67% of his passes. He understands what Dan Mullen's trying to get accomplished with all the different plays. He's been an engineer in that mini field that Mullen loves to exploit right over the ball.
He's fully activated the passing offense for the Gators like we haven't seen in a while, but he's going to need some assistance. That assistance has to come from the 11th ranked rushing offense in the SEC. The Gators want to be able to run the rock. They want to be a balanced team coming in this ball game. They have almost as many attempts running the ball as they do passing attempts, but twice the amount of yards passing than they do rushing. And they're going to be led by LaMichael Piron. He has 100 attempts on the season. The next closest is Dameon Pierce at 35. But they have to stay committed to the run if they're going to win this ball game. The team that wins the running game wins this game.
You could have an excuse at the beginning of the season with only one returning offensive lineman to be woeful in the running game, but you're in week 10 in the college football season. You've got to produce today.
Yeah. Got to produce, see if they sprinkle in Emory Jones a little bit. But even in the loss to LSU, the Gators looked good. Now for Georgia, they've had a little bit more of a Jekyll and Hyde personality, and their fans are growing impatient, booing the Dogs in a shutout win 2 weeks ago in torrential conditions. Jake Fromm needs to find his A-game, though, today if Georgia is going to succeed here.
Jake Fromm is a terrific player. He's a 70% passer, but unfortunately, your perception is your reality. He's got 9 touchdown passes this year, only 3 interceptions. But the 3 interceptions all came in the loss to South Carolina. And while he's got those 9 touchdowns, the 2 guys he beat out, those Eason and Fields, they've got 40 combined.
Yeah, the key is going to be for Georgia to be able to run the rock. And Florida wants to stop them from running the rock and force Jake Fromm to pass the ball. That great statute you always talk about, 0-5 when he has 30 or more attempts. Twice in this ballgame, the last 2 years, only 31 attempts in these ball games, 31 attempts a total, I should say. But he's going to be going up against some monsters at defensive end. A healthy Jonathan Grenard, healthy Jabari Zuniga. They come back, and they're 1 and 2 in sacks on this football team. Of course, Florida leads the SEC with 29 sacks. So they want to get Jake Fromm and that Georgia offense in some third longs.
Florida's defensive coordinator, Todd Grantham, has been on both sides of this rivalry. Remember, he was the defensive coordinator at Georgia from 2010 through 2013. He is at his best when he is aggressive.
And, of course, they're going to be trying to stop DeAndre Swift, too, here.
Oh, DeAndre Swift. Zip and zazzle. That's what he does, baby. What a tremendous running back. He's got the power. He's got the speed, that breakaway speed. Averages 6.84 yards a carry, 179 last week. His best rushing totals on the season with a couple of touchdowns. So you need to stop this young man if you're going to stop Georgia.
And you talk about winning the rushing game. It's been 13 straight years that the team who wins the battle for rushing yards wins the football game in Jacksonville. All right, now an action involving SEC teams already underway. Texas A&M hosting UT San Antonio, and it was a little even early, but Isaiah Spiller's having a big day, BJ.
It was Spiller! almost got him. 2:14 on the day. It's up to about 2:16, a yard shy of the freshman record that Travion Williams set in 2016.
Someone's got to send you the notes.
Halloween was yesterday.
Not sure what that was. By the way, still to come in the SEC, Auburn just outside the top 10 now after the close loss at LSU. Has Ole Miss tonight before Georgia comes to town in 2 weeks. Arkansas still looking for its first conference win, hosting Mississippi State. A resurgent Tennessee team facing a very good UAB squad in Knoxville. And Vandy visits South Carolina. All right, we go back to the scoreboard here. And to say Michigan picked up right where they left off against Notre Dame, Rick, would be the understatement.
That would be accurate. Basking in the glow of the one-sided victory over Notre Dame, they get off to a great start. Giles Jackson, 97 yards for touchdown. Pedestrian day for the offense, but the defense has been up to snuff.
Yeah, they're doing okay. 35-7. They did have 303 rushing yards last week in the big one against Notre Dame, and they got Michigan State in a couple weeks. But remember the Josh Gaddis, Mike Locksley war of words that definitely going the Gaddis way as Maryland has been stumbling here of late. How about the offense from Wake Forest, BJ?
Yeah, I got a song for this one too, but I ain't gonna sing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You watch Jamie Newman, Fine Jack, Frudenthal. Y'all are so mean on this show. 3 TD catches for the tight end, Frudenthal, career high.
The Wolfpack howls, though, BJ. You can join right in. Yeah, Wake Forest up 44-10 at this point. A reminder over on CBS Sports Network, it's Army and Air Force up next, followed by number 17 Cincinnati and ECU, and the number 21 Boise State visits San Jose State, capping a quadruple header. Now, I don't know if you guys got a chance to see this wonderful special Through the Lens show that preceded us, showcasing some of the great college football moments CBS Sports broadcast throughout the years. But, of course, there's a lot that gets left on the cutting room floor. But we did find a couple items, I believe.
That's a good look. Were you in the Thriller video?
You look younger now. Oh, Rick.
Oh,
the hair.
Remember hair. Remember hair.
Remember hair. Oh, for the win.
Bye.
6 foot, huh?
6'1", every inch of it.
All right, coming up.
Cleats on.
Gary and Brad joined us from Jacksonville to talk more about these SEC divisional blockbuster matchups and discuss the inaugural CFP rankings in anticipation of Tuesday's release. The Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes-Benz, is sponsored by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. And by New Orleans Tourism. Leave with a story, not just a souvenir.
Welcome to ranking season. And in college football, we love our rankings. The coaches poll, the AP poll. But of course, the only poll that really matters this time of year is the college football playoff rankings. I said the college football playoff rankings. We're number one. We're number one. You know we're number one. Number one. We are the number one. Do you know that since the college football playoff rankings began 5 years ago, the school that's been ranked number one on the first week of rankings has never gone on to win the national championship? So, you still want to be number one? Yeah, I thought so. And you know what's even crazier? The school that's been ranked number one even in the final week of the rankings has never won the Natty. A 4 seed, a 2 seed, another 2, another 4, and another 2. So let's not get all rabid over rankings, okay? Because there's a lot of football to go, and anything can happen. Just ask these guys. We can still win the East. 6 weeks to go. It's gonna be fun. But maybe it ain't so good to be number one. We're in number 2. We're in number 3. We're in number 4.
Don't go too far down. We'll get the first CFP rankings from that committee on Tuesday, but using this week's AP poll, I guess you don't feel very good after hearing that if you're new #1 LSU, maybe you don't want to be in the pole position. What are your feelings on the start of the CFP rankings coming out in our new #1 here?
History notwithstanding, this is a prestigious play. If I'm sitting there at #1, you love that if you're LSU, or if it's even another team, even though history doesn't look like it's going to be on your side. So you go out and you control your own destiny and don't worry about that. And at this standpoint, it really doesn't matter.
There are all sorts of races going on. There's recruiting races. There's this race to see who's going to be the national champion. But the truth of the matter is everybody on this list controls their own destiny, with the exception of Oregon, Utah, and Oklahoma. Everybody, including our game today, if you win out, you're in. And it sets up beautifully, but it's like the Indy 500, right? Pole position. You can win from lots of different
places. They're this close together.
Exactly. Who's drafting who, right?
Exactly.
And also, in terms of the playoff committee, I'm not so sure we have a handle on what their criteria is. It seems like it changes from season to season.
Well, to your point, there's a new committee. It's a brand new gathering, and we're going to hear for the first time just this coming Tuesday.
But winning 3 games versus top 10 competition in your first 8, you should be #1.
Should be. Florida and Georgia, they just want to avoid loss #2. And as for our game, good day for football in Jacksonville, 66 degrees. Forecast is cloudy, but it's always sunny where we find Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson getting set to call today's game. And let's continue here with the playoff talk. Gary, I know that first playoff ranking is one of your favorite things to discuss, huh?
Hey, Zook, the only thing Gary likes better than the first college football playoff ranking is picking a Heisman winner in July.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. You know, this is a big week for the committee, though, because they got to go there. They got to get familiar with the room service menu. You know, no Barry Alvarez, not as much fun this year.
The beverage list changes at that point.
Exactly. So, R.C. Slocum, got to find your way. You know, it's a real big week.
Big week. You know, if you look at the AP poll and the coaches poll, and it's LSU and Alabama, and then it's flipped, it would be interesting to see that the committee sees something that the media and the coaches don't see, as far as LSU and Alabama being some kind of 1 and 2.
And I still think the poll is going to reflect the biggest win of the year so far in my mind. Auburn beating Oregon. What would things look like if that hadn't happened? Oregon would be, what, 5th in controlling as Rick just talked about their destiny in this whole thing. That's still a big win for the conference and for the Pac-12.
Focusing on today's game, fellas, Kirby Smart is a Nick Saban disciple. We've tracked Nick Saban's success at Alabama, and he was old school until he found Tua, and all of a sudden he's in this blitzkrieg of offense that we're enjoying in college football. When does Kirby Smart follow suit and join ranks with the blitzkriegers?
Boy, there are hints that with a lot of talk radio that this guy participated a lot in the hometown this week, right?
Oh, yeah. It was tough around Georgia this week because, you know, they laid an egg against South Carolina, and Jake Fromm had 3 interceptions in that game, and then there was the deluge and the monsoon against Kentucky. So I think there's more doubters right now in the Georgia camp than there are backers like there were at the beginning of the season.
I think, though, Rick, it's a bit distorted. You know, if you went through the game with Jake Fromm, and he's getting a little criticism, I graded the game. I thought he had 3 negative throws in the game. Obviously, the interception was one of them. The other one, I thought it was a miscommunication between a receiver and a quarterback. And then the throw in overtime actually almost hit the receiver, Tyler Simmons, right in the head on the play. I don't think it was as bad as it is. But, Rick, you know this. I did this. When they put INTs behind your name, you're going to get criticized. Then they have a deluge. I don't see Georgia completely going away with the way Kirby built the team. Their best player is still #7, DeAndre Swift.
And if everybody in Georgia thinks that all of a sudden Jake Fromm's going to throw for 500 yards today, I bet that's not going to happen.
Guys, you know it's a huge contest when we start discussing it 2 weeks out, as we did last week at the conclusion of your Auburn-LSU ball game. Your thoughts on Tua and the health of that ankle and Alabama overall going into that matchup?
You know, we talked about this last night. Gary said, you really think Tua's going to play? And I said, I think he's going to play. It's 21 days in between injuries. It's easy for me to say. I didn't mess up my ankle and have tightrope surgery and all that. But he promised his team he'd be back, and I still think he's going to be there.
He may be, but, you know, Rick, you and I played quarterback. Rick, you were a head coach. The complication is, do you want to get Mac Jones ready for the game? How do you divide up the whole week of practice? Because if you don't give Mac Jones the reps all week, if Tua gets in there and can't go, I don't think Mac Jones will be prepared to beat LSU.
Well, it is a complicated factor determining how much Mac Jones, especially given his lack of reps up until the Arkansas game. We'll wait and see about that one. I'm interested in your take on Kyle Trask. What do you think you're going to see from Kyle Trask today from the Gators?
I think he's been the surprise of this conference. You know, when we teed up this season, it was the story of the quarterbacks. It was led Burrow, Fromm right here in this game, but a backup quarterback now, if he wins this game, will be the story of the conference. He's going to be in position to get, you know, barring a huge upset, to get to Atlanta to play LSU or Alabama. And there cannot be a better story than the way he's changed this team. And you know what? He fits the talent on this Florida team. The receivers is the strength of the team.
We talked to Dan Mullen last night, and he said, you know, everybody calls him a game manager, and everybody uses that term. He goes, I think that's the best thing a quarterback could ever be, is a game manager, and he knows how to run it. He's got 8 guys to throw it to, and he gets it in the right playmaker's hands.
Let me say this. You never get paid in the NFL with a game manager tag. Believe me about that, okay?
And he gets Kadarius Toney back as well as they try to add to that arsenal. But, guys, it's always been about the running game. I know Georgia's taken a lot of hits for being a little old school and a little boring, but isn't it about running the football? It's been the team that wins the running game 13 straight years that wins this game in Jacksonville.
Right. DeAndre Swift last year had his coming out party, Zook, his first 100-yard game. He's had a lot of them since, and he saved the bacon for Georgia against Kentucky. He took that team on his shoulders and went for the second highest total of his career, and he's going to need a performance, I think, like that today, Garrett.
Yeah, I do think, and we talked to Dan Mullen on the phone yesterday preparing for the game, and I said, Dan, what do you need? And he said, it would be nice not to turn the ball over 3 times, 2 in the first quarter. So it's one of those games. You know, I do think the difference in this game, Florida's not going to win the game running the ball. They're going to have to throw the ball to win the game.
Very good stuff. Looking forward to seeing it unfold. Brad and Gary. Sorry, Dr. Nessler, thank you very much. We'll see you guys in a little over 30 minutes for kickoff. And when we return, the story of Georgia offensive lineman Andrew Thomas, who keeps the Dogs in tune, both on and off the field.
Two top 25 teams fight to keep their perfect conference records intact.
Hightower, touchdown!
Tonight on CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back. Everyone is singing the praises of Georgia's left tackle, Andrew Thomas. The junior is touted as one of the most prominent offensive linemen in the country. But at one point, he was at a crossroads where he was going to have to choose between football and music. But with the guidance of his coaches and family, he figured out a way to do both.
I grew up in church. I always had a love and a passion for music.
We have a deep history of music going back many years.
We've always been close since we were kids. We grew up singing together all the time. Music is like a connection for us.
When I was really young, about 4 years old, that's when I got my first drum set, and I've been playing ever since.
He drummed a lot.
On the table, he's tapping.
You'll see him out there in practice beating on his pads.
He'll start beating on the sofa, beating on tables.
You'll find him in study hall, he's up there banging on the desk.
Played in the car, and wherever we were, he would drum.
He tapped all the time.
We'd have a pep rally here at school on Fridays, and Andrew would spend the first 20 or 30 minutes with the band, and the next half hour he'd spend with the football team. One day in practice, Coach Slade, called him out and said, man, you're going to have to figure it out. You need to become good at one of these two, because right now you're not really a good left tackle, so don't go play in the band. He just kind of looked at me, and then like the light bulb just turned on. From that point forward, man, he just dominated.
He's been like a second father to me, just taking me in, mentoring me. He played in the NFL for a long time, and he saw potential in me and invested into me to be, who I am today.
I really rode him hard. I just felt like as a head coach, it was my duty, my obligation to make sure I got the most out of a kid who I felt like could be a first-round draft pick one day.
Coach Slade, he sat us down and he just said that if Andrew trusts the process, he would go real far.
He saw the potential in Andrew, giving him instructions just in life and on the field.
His energy and his aura gravitate great people towards him. Whatever he wants to do in life, he'll accomplish it.
I see you, Drew. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. All right. That was nice.
What I get from these coaches, it's not just a 1 year thing or 2 year thing. It's like for life. They're tied in with these kids. They make it a point to stick by them and give them instruction whenever they need it.
You see players like this, maybe once in a lifetime or once in a decade that are musically inclined, very talented in an artistic way, but they're also really talented at football. That's not a normal match. But the ones that are that way usually play for a long time.
I couldn't think of a better human being to coach. And when I tell the young guys, and I'll give examples about what it looks like and what it's supposed to be a student athlete and to go to the next level, Andrew Thomas is the model.
Andrew Thomas keeping the rhythm on that offensive line. I bet he has strong arms from a whole life of drumming away.
They're very musical people, and the boy has some skills. And he's got some skills on the football field as well. And he will not be singing lullabies going up against Grenard or Zuniga, depending on which side they line up on. But he's going to have his work cut out for him.
It will be interesting to see what tune he's singing with those guys coming off the end. But I miss going into homes and home visits as a head coach and seeing all the instruments. Right. I would have been in the Thomas family band. They might have kicked me out, but I would have tried to be in that band.
Now you get to perform here with us. We might kick you out.
You've already kicked me out.
Well, he's got his bandmates alongside that O-line with him today. And we're going to hear from the head coach of the Bulldogs, Kirby Smart, when we return. All right, welcome back to the Drive to Atlanta, presented by Mercedes-Benz. Now let's go to Jamie Erdahl, who caught up with Georgia head coach Kirby Smart a short time ago.
Coach, so much is talked about how much weight this game has on an SEC championship path. How do you handle that with your players in terms of putting pressure on this game or not allowing that to happen?
Well, the way our kids are nowadays, they know the magnitude of this game. It's pretty self-explanatory. So once the playoff system was created and the SEC championship was created, you got to beat Florida to get in there. You understand that they got to beat us.
How do you handle bye week situations? What was the most important thing for your team to shore up as you move ahead in the schedule?
Well, we look at it from a holistic approach. We try to get better at everything, including every player on our roster, top to bottom. We work on fundamentals, the areas we've been weak in, and we really tried to center on that last week.
Your emotions behind this game when you know you're going to come back and make the same kind of impact you could have had as a player playing in this Florida-Georgia game, what are those?
It's a rivalry game. I mean, it's what you come to college football for. It excites me for our guys because they'll remember the outcome of this game for a long time.
And one of these days we'll see a clip of the excitement that you had at that interception in this game.
Hopefully.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Jamie.
Well, we got to see it right there, but this guy, he's known for his defense. Yeah. Everyone wants the offense to be more sparkly, but the defense is the best in the conference.
Yeah, it's the best in the conference right now. The rush defense, although versus Tennessee, Tennessee had 2 receivers that had 100 yards in catches, so that may be problematic going up against Florida.
Whether he likes it or not, right now he's labeled as a student at Old School University.
Yeah.
And he'd better get his degree and hang it proudly on the wall today by running the football and running it with DeAndre Swift over and over again.
6-3 versus top 10 teams, though.
Yeah, with a win today, he would be, and we'll see if that can continue. We get to talk about this a lot more. We're going to hear from Dan Mullen later as well, because coming up next, it is State Farm College Football Today. Hang with us.
The atmosphere is crazy. Once you step on that field, you see half blue and half red.
One of the most highly anticipated games brings 2 of the best in the country together.
The Florida-Georgia rivalry is all about intensity.
Down he goes. The Gators just kept pursuing.
The 2 teams that really don't like each other.
And a hurdle for DeAndre Swift.
A lot of hate between the 2 teams.
I think when you strap it on in our league, it's like you better come ready to play.
Again, they come with the heat, and down he goes. He's going to take it for the Gator touchdown.
There's not many games like this in the country.
It's not often you get a matchup like this.
This is not just a rivalry game between 2 schools. The rivalry is between 2 bordering states.
So if you want to get to Atlanta, you've got to win this game.
You got to be ready for it, but how do you stop it?
He's going to go deep, and I mean deep. Touchdown!
Well, this is how legends are made.
The Florida Gators come into today's game as the highest-ranked one-loss team. A win here would put them in very good position to claim the SEC East crown. Georgia is right behind Florida in the rankings and standings. A win doesn't assure the Dogs of a trip to the SEC championship game, but owning this rivalry at day's end has its own rewards. Hello, everybody. I'm Adam Zucker, and welcome to State Farm College Football today. Coming up next, it's 8th-ranked Georgia and number 6 Florida. Over on CBS Sports Network, it's Army and Air Force up next, followed by number 17 Cincinnati and ECU. Then number 21 Boise State visits San Jose State, capping a quadruple header. Now, the optics of today's Florida-Georgia game are pretty simple. The Gators currently sit atop the SEC East. Whoever wins this game gets the edge in the event of a two-team tie at season's end because the first SEC tiebreaker is head-to-head. However, after today, these two do not have evenly weighted schedules. Florida has 2 conference games remaining, hosting Vanderbilt next week and at Missouri, while Georgia hosts Missouri next week and finishes with Auburn on the road and Texas A&M at home. And you can't count out Missouri just yet. Rick and BJ, was that a laugh? Rejoining me now. Mathematically, they're not out of it.
Okay.
What do you make of today's game and the East Division race unfolding here?
There can only be one beast in the East, and these are the 2 usual suspects.
Right.
When the dust settles today in Jacksonville, we're going to know exactly who has the clear path, not only to the SEC East crown and a trip to Atlanta, but they'll be in the 6th hole in the first college football playoff.
Yeah, this is essentially a playoff game for these two in the East, and they have an intense dislike for each other, so they should take Partisan Fontaine's advice, check all your mirrors while at the light.
That's great advice.
Where we get all our good information.
BJ. Yeah, you don't want that second loss regardless of your mirrors. As we check out both teams warming up now live in our eye test in Jacksonville, starting with number 8, Georgia. Rick, what are you looking for?
Well, you know, Jake Fromm's been through a couple of tough weeks. Obviously, the disappointing loss with South Carolina was unable to atone via his throwing arm in a deluge against Kentucky. But this is a guy who's led his team to the SEC championship game each of the last 2 years, an eyelash of a national championship just 2 years ago.
And this is a guy who can help carry them to another national title opportunity. Had his first career 100-yard game versus Florida last season, did DeAndre Swift.
They hope they get a healthy Lawrence Cager today. He's been out with a shoulder injury. The transfer from Miami. He's that go-to guy, Brian, into the boundary.
Right.
Look for him in the red zone, back shoulder throws. Listen, Kirby Smart is, we just said it, he's old school, but he knows the formula. I think he stays to the formula today, and if they can run it, they'll hoist the trophy.
He always has a tough-minded defense, and it starts with Monty Rice. He leads the Bulldogs right now with 41 tackles on the season, career high, 12 tackles versus South Carolina. Had his original career high of 11 tackles last season in this particular ball game. Richard LeCount, another stud on the defense, team leading 6 tackles and recovered a fumble in the last game versus Kentucky. This guy says, I love to make havoc.
And good news for the Georgia defense. They get Tyson Campbell back. He's been out for 4 weeks. He was that prize recruit. They think he's going to be the next DeAndre Baker, that shutdown corner. We already talked about Florida needing the throw game today. How about this guy, Rodrigo Blankenship? A couple years ago, he hits that game winner against Notre Dame, gets the scholarship. A couple weeks ago, he's on the other side of the coin, missing in overtime against South Carolina. See if he can atone today.
Some of the greatest movie stars and singers started as extras and backup singers. Kyle Trask came off the bench in a great moment for his team. Actually, it wasn't great. They were behind at Kentucky. Ever since then, he has shined. Yeah, he had a hiccup versus LSU, but this guy is a bona fide budding superstar.
We talk about Florida's running game, 142 yards. That's not a big number, but they have big plays. P. Ryan had an 88-yard run against Auburn, and Pierce has had a 75-yard touchdown as well.
And we talk about Trask. He's got some great guys to throw the ball to. Freddie Swain, Van Jefferson. Florida's one of 3 teams in the FBS to have 4 players with at least 275 receiving, 20 receptions, 2 TDs.
They call him Big Game Dan. This guy knows how to find a way to get his quarterback comfortable. Trask has answered the bell. Look for them to try to make third down manageable today.
Oh, some big pieces are back for Florida on that defensive line. You got John Grenard, who was a transfer from Louisville, went out that LSU ball game with that high ankle sprain, and also Jabari Zuniga. He's back as well. Both of these guys have missed a substantial time. Having them back in the fold will bode well, or it should bode well, for Florida.
And Kadarius Toney back for that offense after 6 weeks as well. And Dan Mullen's the only head coach in the SEC East whose roots actually stem from the offensive side of the game, which makes him look even more creative out there in his approach. Right?
And he's a beautiful chess player as a play caller. He's setting things up all the time. He's Bobby Fischer, if you will. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Watch him create a matchup problem for the defense. He sends 3 receivers to the right. He gets Auburn's middle linebacker, KJ Britt, on his wideout, Freddie Swain, Brian.
That's the last thing you want to do, have a middle linebacker chasing a wide receiver. As you see here, it doesn't end well.
Here he throws 4 receivers to the field, knows he's got a run problem for Auburn into the boundary. Pirine does the rest.
KJ Britt has to make that tackle. He also should cross the face knowing he doesn't have help outside.
And you're always looking for RPO opportunities. LSU puts a safety on the line of scrimmage. They check to the RPO, find the big tight end for a big game.
Mullen is a good tricker. You see there the perfect running play or pass play for the imperfect defense of LSU.
All right. Meanwhile, let's get to action elsewhere going on right now involving SEC teams and Texas A&M hosting UT San Antonio, BJ, and the freshman Isaiah Spiller having a career day.
Isaiah Spiller is putting on a show. He's tied the True Frost record at A&M. Travion Williams is tied with him now, 217 on the day, 60-yard run there. And that wasn't good enough. He wants some more green grass, and he goes 50 on this one.
How about that? Most rushing yards by a freshman in a game this season. He's still got a little time. 217 yards, though, and 3 touchdowns, and they'll have South Carolina in their annual crossover coming up next week. Remember, all 3 of their losses to top 10 teams. Michigan looking resurgent after beating Notre Dame and dominating Maryland from the opening kick, Rick.
What do you do for an encore after that one? You run the opening kickoff back. Giles Jackson does the honors. 97 yards to pay dirt. Michigan on the board early. Their running game would be efficient again today. Hassan Haskins right here bolts through the defense for a 14-yard touchdown. Patterson, he gives way to Dylan McCaffrey, 13 of 21 on the day, a touchdown pass. Michigan rolling.
And Haskins coming off a career-high $149, and Zach Charbonnet setting a Michigan record for rushing touchdowns by a freshman. So it's really starting to come together here as the leaves start to fall. And, of course, Michigan destroying Notre Dame last week. The Irish taking advantage of some defense and special teams to set up Ian Book to Cole Kmet, facing a Virginia Tech team that's coming in having won 3 straight with a 5-2 mark, but the Fighting Irish getting on the board first there. 2 ACC teams in action here, but only Wake Forest seemed to show up here.
Yeah, look at this fake. You know, a canine knows what tastes good. A puppy will bite on anything. Must be a lot of pups over there for NC State, because this is an easy 20-yard run for Jamie Newman. 2nd rush TD on the day, and here he's going to get his arm in the action. Actually, the 3rd time he's hooked up with Jack Prudenthal, the tight end for Wake, on the day.
They've got some offense, and Jamie Newman 5 total touchdowns, 44-10 the score there. But if you want points, go to the Carrier Dome. Whoa. Boston College scored 27 in the final 8 minutes of the 2nd quarter. Nebraska now back on top on the road against Purdue. Got a pep talk from Drew Brees this morning. UCF, they were down 23-21, so they're taking care of business against Houston. And Navy running for 408 yards. Malcolm Perry throwing it a little bit last night at UConn.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. All right, we'll continue to get you ready for a day and night of college football with a look at the other big games in our Saturday Spotlight. And could the SEC get 2 teams in the college football playoff? We'll discuss. You are watching State Farm College Football today on CBS.
Yes.
Holy smokes. What a throw. Right on the button.
10-5. Touchdown, Tigers!
I can't wait for this LSU-Bama game.
If this doesn't get your blood flowing, nothing will.
Welcome back. Jake Fromm ranks in the top 5 in Georgia history in touchdown passes, passing yards, and pass completions. The junior from Warner Robins, Georgia, also has a 9-5 record against top 25 teams and is the focus of our 20-second drill.
William Jacob Fromm, quarterback, University of Georgia,
2 brothers, mom and dad, granddad, best friend, 2 dogs, Charlie, Dixie. I love steak and taters, favorite food. My favorite hobbies are hunting and fishing. Sports, love them all. Love God. But 1 second. Dang it.
Hey, you got it all in there.
What, no maters? Was he a clean player?
Taters, baby. And are we sure that was a steak?
Might have been
not so sure.
Pork chops.
Yeah, but this young man, everyone's looking at those turnovers versus South Carolina, but he has drops he's had to deal with from his wide receivers, and that was the big question mark coming into the season, to play at that position.
Yeah. When in rhythm, this guy's as good as anybody in the country. When they come out of rhythm, which unfortunately happened in the South Carolina game, it looked un-Georgia-like, right? Yeah. 51 passes. That's out of the rhythm for Georgia.
And I think Brad and Gary touched on that with us about the ball going off the receiver's hands. But you know what? He is 2-0 against Florida. And now here's Jamie Erdahl, who filed this tailgate report presented by Smile Direct Club earlier.
We are in Jacksonville today for a classic Battle of the Border game between the Florida Gators and the Georgia Bulldogs, each with a blemish on their schedule and a bye week under their belt. Both teams hoping they have shored up all their inconsistencies to move ahead with this top 10 matchup that will surely be a fight to the finish. Coach, you are placing a staunch Georgia defense today, but if anyone can manipulate their offense to take advantage, you can. What have you prepared for them, your offense?
Well, I mean, they got great talent from the front linebackers all the way to the secondary. Not a lot of weak spots, so we got to just come out, execute clean, and take advantage. We'll create some one-on-one matchups on the field, and when we get those, we have to win more than we lose.
You made an interesting point about Kyle Trask and how people are calling him a game manager, but that's not a bad thing. What kind of game does he have to manage today?
Well, you got to get us in the right plays, get us in the right protections, make good reads down the field, distribute the ball. I mean, they're going to try to take away different receivers. What he's got to do is just take what they're going to give us, and if he can do that, we'll be successful.
Speaking of receivers, you get Kadarius Toney back today, but also 2 edge rushers. Which one of those 2 groups will need to have the biggest impact for you?
Well, I think certainly those 2 guys on defense are huge. We got to slow down their run game. They do a great job setting the edge in the run game, trying to get some pressure on their quarterback. And we have, getting Kadarius is a great, is an explosive playmaker for us, but we have depth at receiver. We have a lot of guys that can make plays at that position, so it's really good to get those defensive guys back.
Coach, thanks.
Thank you.
This game always brings out great fans and great former players like Georgia's Tavares King and Florida's Javon Curse. Today's game has great weight on who emerges from the East to play in the SEC Championship on December 7th in Atlanta. But today in Jacksonville, it comes down to a Gator chomp or a Bulldog stomp.
Indeed. And I tell you what, this is a big game for Dan Mullen wearing that visor in tribute to a man who's won this game many times.
Yeah, the whole game manager moniker, first of all, it's not a pejorative. Everyone has to manage the game at that position, but they throw the ball down the field. He's not dinking and dunking Kyle Trask. This guy's an excellent football player, and I think they have to commit to the run just like they did in Auburn. They're tied for the nation's lead with runs of 75 yards or more with 3 of those.
What I admire about Coach Mullen is it's never too big for him. No matter what the stage is, and I think his team follows his lead. They come out and play no matter what the stage is. They play really good football. Now, it may not be good enough, but we'll later find that out. But this guy likes the moment.
Oh, yeah, and he used to do it under Urban Meyer's watch, and now he's just 47 years old. He's having a great career. I'm telling you, it's a big day here for Dan Mullen, but it is also a big moment for you guys. It is pick time, and they both did very well last week.
Looking at my notes.
5-1. You both went 5-1, so BJ still maintaining his 1-game lead on the season. As we take a look at our Saturday Spotlight presented by Chick-fil-A. Starting out west with a potential preview of the Pac-12 Championship as number 7 Oregon and USC clash at the Coliseum. A last-second field goal to beat Wazoo a week ago kept the Ducks' 7-game winning streak and playoff hopes very much alive. Meanwhile, the Trojans got some fourth-quarter heroics of their own as Keaton Slovis, the freshman, and Michael Pittman hooked up for 2 scores in Boulder to take over first place in the South. I know you don't want to hear that.
It has been a fantastic season thus far for the Ducks, minus that 1 loss early to Auburn. But last week they got 35 put on them in air raid offense by Washington State. They get air raid again, but maybe with better receivers this time. Keaton Slovis playing well. I'm on the Trojans.
Wow. I'm going to stick with the Ducks. They've had a pick in 14 of their last 17. In last week's ball game, they held Wazoo to 1 for 9 on third downs. I know Wazoo didn't need a lot of third downs to score, but I'm going to go with the Ducks on the road.
All right, but a Bruin picking the Trojans here. All right, moving on to a rematch of last year's Pac-12 title game as number 9 Utah visits Washington. The Utes are coming off a 35-0 drubbing of Cal, their first shutout of the Pac-12 opponent since joining the conference in 2011. Meanwhile, the Huskies now play the role of spoiler, having 2 weeks to regroup since that devastating loss to Oregon, BJ.
Yeah, Washington. Which Washington team shows up? When they win, 5 wins on the season, they average about 195 on the ground, 133 in the 3 losses. When they win, 13 turnovers in those 5 ball games. When they lose, 0 turnovers. So run the rock and turn the ball over and stop Zach Moss. I'm going with the Huskies at home.
I can't believe I'm not going with the Huskies at home, but I think Utah is so formidable on defense, especially on third down. And when you put that against the Huskies, 11 for 50 on third down in the last 4 conference games, you got to go Utes.
How about this? Huskies are 12-1 all time against Utah. That might be an influence. Next up, a marquee matchup in the American West when number 15 SMU visits number 24 Memphis. The unbeaten Mustangs have one of the most explosive offenses in the nation, and a win gives Sonny Dykes' team the inside track on representing the group of 5 in the Cotton Bowl. Meanwhile, the Tigers narrowly escaped Tulsa with a 42-41 win a week ago. They've scored 35 or more in 6 of their 7 wins. Sounds like a shootout, Rick.
I love this SMU story. Congratulations to all involved, but I'm going Memphis at home. Robertson, their receiver's not playing.
That's right.
I think Memphis at this running back, Gainwell's going to have a big day.
Yeah, both had scares last week. They eked out wins. I'm going to go with Memphis as well. I like what Gainwell's doing.
You finally agreed with each other. We finish with the second leg of the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy as Army battles Air Force at 3:30 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. The Black Knights have been dominant in the service academies the last 2 seasons, but today, Jeff Monken's team trying to snap their longest losing streak since 2015. Meanwhile, the Falcons, they can't hoist this year's trophy after the October loss at Navy, but they're 6-2, and they've already surpassed last season's win total. BJ, they've been looking great.
Yeah, the Falcons have been flying freely, and I think they do again today because Army's so banged up.
Fly, Falcons, fly.
There's some people in Philadelphia would like to talk with you. All right, back to the rankings.
Cowboys?
No. Back to the rankings, and with 4 SEC teams occupying the top 8 spots in this week's AP poll and the initial CFP rankings being unveiled Tuesday, we ask the inevitable question: can the SEC get 2 teams into the college football playoff? Do you see it?
Well, it could happen. We saw it in 2017, of course. A lot of things have to happen. You have to have a couple of conference champions in the other leagues that have 2 losses. So that could occur.
Of course it could happen. More likely if Alabama were to beat LSU, and then they run the table based on LSU's resume to date. It just looks like they've had a lot accomplished, and it would obviously be a quality loss on the road. But as he just said, much more to be determined.
Well, let's put a little scenario in there. You have Alabama beating LSU. We'll start with that, all right? And then let's say Auburn beats Alabama. So now Alabama and LSU each have a loss. You have Ohio State and Penn State currently ranked at 3 and 5. So maybe does the Big Ten have any shot at 2 teams? If Penn State beats Ohio State, the Buckeyes would be another great 1-loss team to be compared with LSU and Alabama.
It depends on how that game plays out. If it's similar to Auburn and Oregon at the beginning of the season where it's a close affair, even if you lose that ball game, you could still be in the running. What they're hoping, Penn State, Ohio State, is that Minnesota stays
even for you to say that.
I'm thinking about those taters. Minnesota stays unscathed. They've got Iowa, Wisconsin, and also Penn State left.
Both Ohio State and Penn State have the cachet to merit that kind of consideration. Yeah. But if you have an Auburn win over Alabama, that's also going to bolster Oregon.
Right.
Because that's their lone loss right now. Right. If they're able to run the table, they might stay ahead of a 1-loss non-conference champion.
Woo! Oregon's got to get through today as well, and we'll get BJ a soda as soon as possible. As for today's game, the Dogs lead this very bitter series 52-43 with 2 ties, according to Georgia's records. The first acknowledged meeting was way back in 1915, and they've played in Jacksonville since 1933, except for 2 seasons when this stadium was renovated in the 90s. And last week, both schools announced that this game would be played right there until at least 2023.
Touchdown for the 3rd year in a row. The Black Knights of Army have won the Army-Navy matchup.
State Farm
College Football Today is sponsored by State Farm. Talk to an agent today at 800-STATE-FARM. Jersey Mike Subs. Be a sub above. And by Smile Direct Club. Get the confidence of a winning smile. And a reminder, you can stream CBS Sports HQ, the free 24/7 news network, for coverage that's always focused on the game. Get nonstop highlights, fantasy advice, and picks. Just download the CBS Sports app to watch today. Now, in 2 seasons at Florida, Dan Mullen's Gators have come back to win 6 games when trailing in the 4th quarter, so you might want to stick around until the end of the game today. And as part of our season-long celebration of college football at 150, Mr. Mullen explains how Doug Flutie's Hail Mary miracle inspired much more than his love of football as a kid.
I remember watching Doug Flutie throw the Hail Mary into the end zone. I mean, I remember just even early memories of my dad and I sitting and watching college football games was so special. It's a sport and a game I've loved since I was a little kid. I mean, the first multiplication table I learned was 7s. So I could reel off touchdowns. I mean, I've loved football ever since I was a little kid, and know that that's such a major part of my life. Is so special.
Right there with him in the backyard. It was 63-56, right? We always were counting 7s. No automatic extra points.
Right. It really helps with the multiplication. And he's looking to put up big numbers again today. As we get ready for kickoff here, guys, we talked about this earlier in the week, but I want to hear your thoughts again on the NCAA finally allowing athletes to benefit from their own name, image, and likeness in a couple of years.
This was a fait accompli. We knew we were going to be right here. So as you stated last week, we've all been saying you might as well get in the room, have a meeting of the minds, and figure this thing out.
Yeah, congratulations for using common sense to realize the genie's out of the bottle. Now let's figure out how to make this work for everybody.
All right, we got 2 teams trying to make things work in Jacksonville today. Each have a loss. You cannot lose twice in college football nowadays. Some final thoughts here before kickoff.
Turnovers.
And who's winning?
Florida's going to win this ball game. 5 turnovers in this matchup the last 2 years. Georgia only 2. Florida securing the merchandise.
In the last 2 years, Georgia's run for 480 yards combined. If they get anywhere close to 200, it's going to be hard for Florida to win. Florida cannot turn the ball over. If they're able to stay away from it, they can win the game.
I'm looking forward to seeing these wide receivers play a big role in this game for Florida. They're going to use the pass to open up the run. You've got to be committed like that pig when it comes to running the rock, Dan Mullen.
Kyle Trask and Dan Mullen together have to be really good on 1st and 2nd down so they make this 3rd and manageable, because Georgia will be aggressive on 3rd and long.
Both teams coming back at full strength now as they get set for their biggest game of the year and the inside track to the east. A reminder that Army and Air Force is coming up over on CBS Sports Network, but game time for number 8 Georgia and number 6 Florida is right after this message and a word from your local station. You have been watching State Farm College Football Today on CBS.